What up guys, Miguel here from Yugatech, and over the years, POCO has established itself as a brand that provides budget-friendly yet high-performing smartphones. In this review, we have the 6th iteration of their flagship lineup, the POCO F6. This phone features the new Snapdragon 8S Gen 3, which has established itself as a performance beast. Lucky for us, we managed to get our hands on a review unit and it did not disappoint. So without further ado, let's dive in to this review. The POCO F6 has a minimalist aesthetic. It's thin, measuring only 8mm, and it's also pretty light at 179 grams. On top of that, it has an IP64 rating for dust and splash resistance. Our device comes in its green colorway, and it's more of a teal, like a muted, shiny teal in real life. The frame feels metallic, but it gets this matte texture that could prove otherwise. At first glance, we immediately took a liking to this iteration of the smartphone in comparison to the predecessor's glossy back panel. The increased smudge resistance from the rear panel alone is much appreciated. The camera sensors are situated on the top left of the back panel, similar to the F5. We also noticed that the new rendition of the phone has a noticeably bigger ring-type LED flash. In front, we have the F6's display panel and punch-hole selfie camera, and it's managed to keep the bezels thin just like the previous model. For buttons and ports, the power button and volume rocker are on the right side. At the bottom, we have 1 out of 2 loudspeakers, a Type-C charging port, and the dual nano SIM card slot. On top, we have the other speaker, a noise-canceling microphone, and an IR blaster. However, unlike the F5, the F6 doesn't come with a 3.5mm audio jack, which could be a letdown for traditional earphone users. Overall, we're pretty happy with the design of the F6. It's nothing too fancy, but it's not too drab either. For display, this phone features a 6.67-inch Crystal Res 1.5K Flow AMOLED display with an adaptive refresh rate that goes up to 120 Hz. It's also covered with Corning Gorilla Glass Victus for protection and gets Dolby Vision support. Power-conscious users can choose to toggle between frame rates in display settings, but we recommend sticking to auto switch to maximize power efficiency. This display made for a consistent and immersive browsing and multimedia experience. The phone also peaks at 2,400 nits of peak brightness, which makes it very easy to use outdoors. For auditory listening, the device has dual stereo speakers situated on the top and the bottom of the phone. We can also access Dolby Atmos via the HyperOS quick settings, which we highly recommend. Overall, the speakers sound pretty good, with notable clarity in the soundstage, perfect for watching or listening to content on the go. For biometrics, the POCO F6 features an optical in-display fingerprint scanner. Although it isn't the quickest we've tested, it rarely fails at recognition. Although the writer of this review did mention that just inputting a passcode for unlocking was faster at times. Meanwhile, the face unlock works as advertised with nothing particular to write home about. Oddly enough, POCO decided to cut down on camera sensors for the base model F6. For those that missed it, the phone's predecessor had a triple rear camera system. Now, the POCO F6 has a dual camera setup consisting of a 50-megapixel shooter with optical image stabilization and an 8-megapixel ultra-wide. For selfies, the phone is equipped with a 20-megapixel front-facing camera. However, its predecessor had a 64-megapixel shooter with the same 8-megapixel ultra-wide lens plus a 2-megapixel macro. After comparing previous and recent shots taken with both devices, we're pretty content with what the F6 offers. We would even dare say that we prefer the F6 more. Don't get us wrong, this isn't a flagship level camera system, but it managed to produce clear images with accurate colors. We also noticed that the HDR isn't too aggressive either. Shots taken with the F6 also provide good amounts of detail to them. Just check out some of our sample shots and let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. But honestly, we think that the hidden gem for the device is in its video capabilities. Last year's models were capped at up to 4K at 30 frames per second, while the F6 can shoot at up to 4K at 60 frames per second. And from experience, this made for buttery smooth clips to help users stay ready for fleeting moments. Like most devices nowadays, it also features a steady video mode, although it caps at 1080p at 60 frames per second when enabled. Considering that POCO isn't aiming too high for the camera segment of this device, they've actually done all right in our book. The POCO F6 runs on Xiaomi HyperOS out of the box based on Android 14. It's smooth, clean, and mostly caters to the end user's experience. To elaborate, everything after the setup was fine. Upon getting the phone ready prior to our tinkering, HyperOS forces you to install apps from their recommendations. While we only picked one app we intended to uninstall anyway, it ran on its own. It installed Bigo Live along with a random game. But other than that weirdness, we don't really have much to nitpick from. It does come with some other apps pre-installed. Usefulness may vary per user, but either way, they can easily be uninstalled if unwanted. For support, both the POCO F6 and the F6 Pro will get 3 years of OS upgrades and 4 years of security patches, which is pretty good compared to devices that don't get past 1 to 2. Something we didn't like about HyperOS is how quick access functions from the right corner drop-down menu doesn't have any labels. See? On one end, it makes it look really clean, but to those unfamiliar, it can take some getting used to without the labels. They do appear only when editing the icons, but so far, that's it. Software-wise, the F6 is okay. HyperOS isn't our favorite, but it is a somewhat cleaner experience compared to MIUI. The brains behind the operations of the F6 is the new Snapdragon 8S Gen 3, courtesy of Qualcomm, featuring an Adreno 735 GPU. Our review unit had a configuration of 16GB of RAM with 512GB of UFS 4 onboard storage. The device was able to handle most games consistently, only heating up during our testing period to get synthetic benchmark scores. We played Teamfight Tactics on the F6 with high settings enabled with no frame drops nor slowing down. After some digging, we found that the F6 is supported by Liquid Cool Technology 4.0 with Ice Loop, which is most likely the reason for the nice thermal performance. For those interested in our benchmark results, putting them up on screen. The phone is quite literally more than capable performance-wise. It managed to max out 3D Mark's wildlife test while having around a score of 1.4 million points in Antutu. And for storage, it wasn't a slouch either. Having high read and write speeds makes for fast processing and faster storage. For battery, the F6 packs a sizable 5,000 mAh cell with support for 90 watts of turbocharging via USB Type-C. And yes, the 90-watt adapter does indeed come in the box. Depending on how long you use the phone, it should be more than enough for your daily activities. As always, we took the phone for a spin with some practical tests with varying results. In PC Mark's Work 3.0 battery test, our POCO F6 lasted 13 hours and 25 minutes. This test was conducted with 50% brightness, muted volume, and in airplane mode. As for our video loop test, the phone provided 18 hours and 34 minutes of media playback. We played a full HD movie with the same aforementioned variables. We even did a gaming test. The F6 can provide users with up to 8 hours and 43 minutes of gameplay. For this, we had brightness and volume set to 50% over a Wi-Fi connection with high settings toggled on. The battery life of the F6 seems to excel for multitasking and media consumption. While it's surprising that it could only pump out roughly 9 hours for gaming, it's still a pretty good number. For connectivity, the phone offers Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.4, NFC, and 5G. The phone also features an IR blaster for smart home appliances and the like. No issues with call quality either. The POCO F6 has a suggested retail price of 24,999 pesos for the 12 plus 512 gig configuration. It's also available with 8 GB of RAM with 256 GB of internal storage for just 21,999 pesos. Wrapping up, we are confident enough to say that the F6 has indeed lived up to POCO's reputation of offering budget-friendly, high-performing devices. This year's iteration of the F-series lineup gave us design changes, improvements on performance, and overall value for money. While areas to improve in biometric recognition speed and our own personal software gripes were there, the pros outweigh the cons. Long story short, if you're interested in this phone, you better look into it. But of course, let us know what you guys think of the POCO F6 first before you make a purchase. If you guys have any questions, we'll be sure enough to answer them as long as we can. But yeah, is it a cop or a drop? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. But if you enjoyed this video or found it informative or fun or educational, be sure to smack that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell icon to get notified of our future uploads. Be sure to visit yugatech.com for the latest tech news and reviews. Once again, this has been Miguel, and I'll see ya in the next one.